Hello and welcome to Guelph GradCast, the only podcast dedicated to bringing you real conversations with real Guelph grads. As always, I'm your host, Ryan, and today on the podcast, I'm joined by Lauren Yee. Lauren graduated from the University of Guelph's Applied Human Nutrition program in 2022 and currently works as a registered dietitian. But you may have also caught her on TikTok and Instagram as your Canadian dietitian bestie, where she provides realistic nutrition and health tips, and maybe the odd video of her making a bed. Welcome to the podcast, Lauren. How are you today?
I'm good. Thanks so much for having me, Ryan.
So we kind of start these podcasts kind of the same way. I want to get into the work you're doing currently, but I want to kind of obviously take it back a bit and talk to you a little bit about the University of Guelph and kind of how you came to that decision, how you first heard about the University of Guelph, and also why you chose the program that you did.
Yeah, okay. Honestly, I don't even remember how I came across Guelph. I think that I kind of settled on this dietitian nutrition career path, and there's only a few programs in Ontario that offered like an accredited program. So that kind of narrowed down my options, and Guelph was one of those choices for me. And what really sold me was when I came to the campus. I just fell in love. I feel like it felt like home. I came in the fall, which I feel like is a quintessential time to enjoy
Mm-hmm.
campus with the colors and just seeing how beautiful it was. And I don't even remember the name of my tour guide, but she was so nice and just like really helpful. And so I feel like those first interactions on campus really solidified like, yeah, this is somewhere where I want to spend the next 4 years. As well as it obviously had the program that was like accredited for my career path as well, which helped too. And so that's kind of how I settled, and my decision was honestly pretty easy.
And so applied human nutrition, was that how long have you been interested in that kind of, you said you wanted to be a dietitian from the start, but when did that kind of thought enter your mind and when did you think that was a possibility for a career?
Yeah, I think pretty early on. I have loved food for a really long time, and it's been a really big part of my family in terms of like cooking with my grandparents and my parents. And so I've always had a love of food. And then in high school, I took a fitness class, and as part of our fitness class, there was some nutrition components. And my fitness teacher was always just kind of inspiring our classes to kind of be their healthiest, strongest self. And I was like, I kind of want to do that for other people. And the nutrition part is what really kind of interested me. So I started just researching like nutrition career paths. I don't know, kind of whatever Google searches I was doing back in high school. And I came across the field of dietetics. And then from there, I was like, okay, yeah, this sounds like kind of something that I want to do. And I would be able to kind of inspire others to live their healthiest life and kind of take that with me. And that's how I kind of settled on the career path of dietetics.
Nice. And then kind of once you kind of got into the program, was there anything that
Mm,
surprised you once you got here? Like
mm,
I imagine, like you said, you did some nutrition in high school and learned a
yeah.
bit, but then taking it to the university level, it's obviously a step up. So was there anything that kind of surprised you or that you found extra interesting?
Yeah, I think what surprised me was kind of the baseline that we needed in first year of regular chemistry and biology before we kind of actually got to the nutrition piece. So taking those kind of courses that maybe, I took like chemistry and biology and things like that in high school, but taking, first year chem was definitely a little bit of a shocker, but we got through it. So that was definitely surprising. But the other thing that was surprising, I feel like, was also just the variety of courses as well, of like, okay, so not only are we taking like chemistry, but we're also taking psychology and getting that social science aspect as well, which is maybe something I didn't expect, but I really enjoyed.
Yeah, well, that's a good point because I never really thought about it, but really so much about food is like socialized, right? How you like ice cream as a reward. You learn that, right? So I imagine there's a big part of getting people to eat healthy is really just the psychology part of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not even just like ice cream as a reward, but it's also a way that we connect with others, kind of going back to what I was saying about cooking with my parents, like making a lasagna with my nona and those kinds of
Yeah.
things. And it's part of celebrations. And so it is totally like there's a huge psychological aspect around food and nutrition.
Yeah, for sure. Because it's like a memory, right? Like it's a way you can kind of connect with your family and past generations, right? It's passed down, like, and every family makes something a little bit different, right? And speaking of food, Guelph is often kind of unofficially called like Canada's food university. Being in applied human nutrition, being on campus, do you think that title applies? Do you think it's accurate?
Oh, absolutely. I'm one of I still miss the food to this day. I'm on campus and I loved all the restaurants. I also have an allergy myself.
Hmm.
And so like being able to have that be safely navigated on campus was like a huge part of how good of an experience I had at Guelph, honestly. But oh yeah, the food. Even by like the end of my fourth year when they were putting in like new restaurants in the UC, I was like, no, I'm gonna miss them. So
Yeah,
yeah, definitely a big part of my experience that I enjoyed as well.
for sure. I went to the University of Guelph, and then now I work there. And kind of coming back to campus, I was like amazed at how good the food is, like compared to most places. Like,
Mm, hmm.
and also, you're right. They did change a lot. They moved where the Starbucks is. They moved stuff around, and it's definitely nice, but it is different. And so, you said you want to be a dietitian from the beginning. So, as you're in the program, are you did you have that in the back of your mind, the process that you would have to do to become a dietitian, and what is that process? Because maybe people who want to be a dietitian don't know what the full process is.
Yeah, good question. So I definitely kind of had it in mind from the beginning. And in the AHN, the Applied Human Nutrition Program, there's an option to kind of take the dietetic route or not. I can't remember the specific thing. We had to essentially sign something saying like we wanted to be a dietitian, so there were specific credits that we needed. So the process for becoming a dietitian is you need an undergrad degree from an accredited program. And then from there, you need either a master's or a dietetic internship afterwards. And then you need to write, and included in that, whether you do a master's or not, there's typically like a placement component as well. And then you have to write something called the CDRE, which is the Canadian Dietetic Registration Exam. So kind of like our board exam to allow us to practice as dietitians in Canada.
Very cool. And so you kind of go through that process, and now you are a dietitian. What was that transition like from being kind of a student to actually doing the work?
You know what? I'm still adjusting to that transition, honestly. It's definitely interesting because, you go from, undergrad life, and then I did a master's and a placement program. So I was still kind of in school for 2 semesters after my undergrad. And then I did placement. So then you're kind of a student and working at the same time, which is an interesting kind of feeling. And then transitioning to working is definitely something I'm still adjusting to because I feel like um, it's a completely different schedule, right? So at least for me in undergrad, you have a lot of free time. Of course, you have your classes, but you're able to kind of structure your days in a certain way, versus kind of that 9 to 5 hours, which I'm kind of doing right now. And so it's been really, really nice to actually practice what I've been working towards for all these years. But also like routine wise, definitely I like to say I'm like a baby dietitian or like a 2-year-old dietitian. So like it's definitely still adjusting to the work-life balance, I would say for sure.
I think one thing I always recognize is like just going to the grocery store at 6 o'clock in the evening versus, hey, I have some time in the middle of the day. I'm going to go. It's dead. But then now you're fighting for space. There's nothing on the shelves, and that's just work life. And did you find that the program kind of helped prepare you for the work you're doing now?
I totally right. So those baselines especially, there was a course, I always forget the name, so I wrote it down. Field Experience in Nutrition Education. That course specifically, I feel like really helped me kind of see what that transition could be like in terms to working post grad. Because I know, I said I wanted to be a dietitian for a long time, but I actually never worked with a dietitian before. I didn't even know what a dietitian did day to day, honestly, before that course. And so that actually let me kind of sit in with one of the on-campus dietitians to see like what does a day actually kind of look like? How are they structured? What can being a dietitian entail in like an actual practical setting? And so I feel like that gave me really good insights to kind of prepare me for like placements and transitioning later on to actually working as a dietitian.
And now you've been doing it for a little bit now. In your mind, how would you define what a dietitian is?
Really good question. And I think it's really interesting because we can work in so many different settings. But I think at the end of the day, being a dietitian is kind of comes back down to just helping people live their healthiest life in whatever capacity that looks like. So like in the setting that I'm working in, it's working one-to-one with clients, really helping them to like build healthier habits, to work towards goals like weight loss or chronic condition management. But for a dietitian in the hospital setting, it can be helping someone live their healthiest life in the capacity that they're in with like a chronic illness in the hospital, right? So it's kind of across the board. I think that's what we generally can't speak for all dietitians, but that's what we really are kind of trying to strive for.
Yeah, that's a really important way to describe it because I imagine, oftentimes we just hear the term like eat healthy, but for
Mm,
depending on what health issues you're struggling with, eating healthy could be very different, right?
hmm
As simple as an allergy or a
hmm
sensitivity, or also maybe you have kidney problems and you can't eat certain foods, or but
Yeah.
it's not as simple as just eat lots of vegetables, right?
It's way more nuanced than that. And with my clients as well, they are always asking me, like, is this food good or bad or healthy and not healthy? And my answer is always like, well, there's a lot more to it than just putting it in one category or the other. Because there's, as we've been saying, it's like there's so much more than just like the actual nutrients that we get from a food item that play a role in how we eat.
And so I talked about this in the intro, but you actually have a bit of like an online presence. And how did that start? And kind of talk about the kind of the content that you create there.
Yeah, so that started, I feel like my first post on Instagram was like in 2018 or something. And it was like a horrible photo of like a smoothie bowl or something with like the flash on it. But I think at that point it started because I just wanted to share like different healthy recipes I was making. Just that's kind of how it started, was sharing different foods I was eating and enjoying. And then it kind of turned into another avenue for, I'll keep coming back to saying, hopefully, inspiring others to kind of live that healthiest life. And it's kind of turned into, especially now, in like a realistic way. Like
Uh-huh.
I'm always kind of saying, we don't need to cut out all of our favorite foods to reach our health goals, or like it can be something as small as adding an apple a day. I know that sounds cliche, but like one serving of, fruits a day to just kind of work towards those goals. And so that's kind of what it's turned into now. So more than just, my horrible flash photos of my my foods I'm eating.
It's part of your journey.
Yeah.
And you made a good point about like, realistic, because I think oftentimes people feel like they have to stick to this really intense regimen to lose weight, and then they ultimately fail and then just kind of go back. But I've kind of learned over time, consistency is more important than intensity. So like, like you said, if you can commit to at least eating an additional serving of fruits or vegetables a day,
hmm
that's the first step. And then you do that for long enough, and eventually the rest of it kind of becomes easy. One thing, like the online space, especially when it comes to health advice, is kind of just populated with so much information, and it's kind of maybe conflicting. And as an actual healthcare professional with actual credentials, what are some things that people can kind of be mindful of or look out for when they're kind of seeing maybe an Instagram reel that looks really interesting, but maybe is misleading or incorrect?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. There is so much information out there. And there's so much information to the point if I'm, off duty, let's say, and I'm kind of scrolling, sometimes I can even be like, oh, that's interesting. I'm like, Lauren, hold on a second. Like, let's, take a step back. So I think when you said that word credentials, that's something that I would consider as like a starting point. Because if you see, a TikTok or a reel or whatever that's saying maybe something, I don't know, there's so many different nutrition things out there, was to actually like click on their profile to see, do they have any credentials? And even people with credentials can say, or do certain things that's maybe not all evidence-based. But as a dietitian, we're really supposed to only share that kind of evidence-based advice. So see like, okay, do they have any credentials? Do they have a degree in this? Do they have a background in this? Can be a really helpful starting point. So that's kind of one of my first steps, to kind of go from there and see like, okay, what is this person's actual background in kind of saying whatever they're saying online.
Speaking of credentials, and I know the answer, but I'm curious how you'll frame it or to speak to it. Nutritionist versus dietitian.
Mhm.
What's the difference?
Fantastic question. So dietitians, as I kind of said earlier, have to go through that specific process of undergrad, master's, or internship, passing that board exam. And it's a, what's it called? A protected like title. So only dietitians that have passed this exam are registered within whatever college in their province, can use that title. So it's very like heavily regulated, whereas a nutritionist is not a regulated protected title. So like Ryan, you could call yourself a nutritionist. Like it's
Amazing.
yeah,
I'm putting that on my resume.
Perfect. So it's just a lot less regulated, and there's like as dietitians, I was saying, we kind of have to come from that evidence background. So if there's not actual evidence to say this or this is, helpful or not helpful tool or nutrient or whatever it is, we kind of have to base our guidance in that. Whereas nutritionists don't have that same kind of guidance. So it's not to say like what nutritionists are saying is wrong or bad or anything like that. It's just kind of like a different process and less regulated. So something to just be mindful of.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's not necessarily they can have good information, but
Yeah.
there's no regulation telling them they have to have the right information, I guess. And so, you're sharing advice, you are working as a dietitian. Is there any kind of like piece of information that comes up all the time that's maybe a misconception that drives you crazy that you wish people would?
My favorite one is probably that like carbs are bad or carbs lead to weight gain. Um, I honestly probably hear that maybe every day, like, and so kind of that is a huge misconception. So my little kind of tidbit here is that carbohydrates are so many different foods. And I think a lot of people associate carbs with like cakes, cookies, those kinds of foods, which are carbs. But our fruits and veggies are carbs too, which are really, really important, as well as our whole grains, right? And so carbs can give us energy. They can give us really important nutrients like B vitamins and fiber. And so they're not this like villain in our diets. They're really an important factor. So I want to get it out there. Carbs, like I'm a huge fan of carbs. So
Mhm. It's my,
yeah.
and you need to, your brain runs on carbs, right? Like you need carbs to think.
Yeah, glucose is like our preferred, sorry, carbohydrates break down into glucose, which is our body's like main kind of preferred energy source. And so yeah, gives us energy throughout the day, not only just to do our daily things, but also to fuel our brain.
That's a good point.
Hmm.
I think sometimes people just, I'm curious what if this is true, but I've heard that basically anyone who consciously decides to change their diet will see some positive results initially, regardless of what that diet is. Sometimes just actively choosing to be healthy, regardless of what it is, you will lose some weight initially. And I always wonder if a lot of these fad diets are just a novel way to restrict your calories, right? So if you're saying like, oh, you can't eat carbs or you can't eat this, it's just a way to kind of restrict your eating and you're eating less, really, regardless of what you're choosing to eat.
Likely, right? Like there's so many different diets out there. And at the end of the day, if we're focusing specifically on weight loss, whether it's like just making healthier choices or specifically focusing on calories, food wise, the way to lose weight is to just like eat less, right? And
Yeah,
being
yeah.
in like that calorie deficit. And so exactly what you're saying is like, okay, which method is the easiest way for someone to kind of go that route? But again, it's a lot more nuanced to say how can we do this in a way that's sustainable, where you're still enjoying your foods, you know, you're not hungry, you still have energy, but you can still work towards your goals. So there's so many different factors that come into play with that as well.
What do you think is kind of like the most common hurdle that people struggle with in terms of meeting their health goals?
Mm. Fantastic question. Again, I feel like
Sorry.
it depends on, no, that's okay. I feel like it depends on the person, but like in the role I'm in right now, it's really that kind of behavior piece I'm noticing. Because it's like for the most part, not everyone, right? But a lot of us know like, for example, for me, let's say like eating veggies is really important. As a dietitian, I know that. Veggies are not my favorite food. Like I don't even love veggies that much. So thinking about I know the importance of that, but how do I actually action that? And like make that change in my day-to-day life. So a lot of people kind of know maybe what they have to do or what they want to do, but it's that step between knowing and doing. That's, you know, that facilitation piece there.
And is there any kind of simple steps people can do to say like maybe eat more vegetables? Like, is it just having them around or not buying cake?
I think like again, depends on the person, but generally I would say kind of like start small. So like when we're thinking about, you know, working towards our health goals, thinking about what's like the smallest step I could take to start that's actually realistic. Right? So with this like veggies example, if let's say I'm eating like one serving of veggies a day and I say, tomorrow I'm gonna have 10 servings. You know, like how realistic is that actually? So saying, okay, is there somewhere in my day that's really easy where I can just add in one extra serving? And you know, I don't know, maybe like I have eggs for breakfast, I can add a handful of spinach to my scrambled eggs, and that feels like a really realistic, easy way. And then we're already kind of one step better off, and it's like a really realistic, sustainable way, and we can just kind of build on that.
Um, and so we talked a lot about like science and your academics, but being at Guelph, was
Mhm.
there thinking outside of academics, was there anything that you particularly have a fond memory of the campus
Mm,
or the people you met or just being a student at the University of Guelph?
yeah. Honestly, everything. I miss Guelph every day. I loved it so much. And so a few like really specific fond memories I have would be being in residence. So I was in South in Mountain. And I lived in an academic cluster. So that's something I always recommend to people who tell me they're wanting to go to Guelph. So I lived with a bunch of people in the Bachelor of Applied Science program. And so that made for really fun like homework nights together where we would all do like our chemistry homework and struggle through together. And it also allowed me to connect with people in my classes as well, who I also lived with, which I found really helpful. So we would go to class together, come back, do our homework, and we all had kind of similar interests. So that was really nice. And then as well, I was also part of the Student Nutrition Awareness Program. So SNAP, which was a really good experience. I started as a volunteer, and then by the time I left, I was the coordinator. And so like career-wise, that was really helpful for me to kind of get my foot in the door with some initial nutrition experience. And it was also a really fun way to be involved on campus.
Yeah, I think it's really like having that community around you is really important because I think sometimes, especially being a student, you can get kind of caught up and be in your own world and just focus on studying and getting to class. But in a lot of ways, having that support system around you can actually benefit you. Maybe you take a little, maybe you don't study for an extra hour, but the support you get actually ends up helping you in the long run.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like obviously, we're at Guelph to learn and that's what we're there for. But at the same time, there's like, I mean, I don't think there's ever going to be a time where you're in the same city as potentially like all your best friends and a bunch of people the exact same age as you. And so it's really also a time I feel like to connect with people and enjoy those different opportunities as well. So finding that balance between learning, but also really being able to enjoy your time while you're there.
Yeah, that's one thing I noticed when I went to university was maybe when you're in university, you felt very, this is going to sound weird, but you felt more unique in some ways, like your interest and what you were into. Maybe there was the odd person who felt the same way, but you get to university and you find like, your people. It's like
Mhm.
we're all into the same thing and then just this newfound sense of community. Speaking of like outside of Guelph or outside the
Mhm.
University of Guelph, do you ever find that you come across people who are also Guelph grads or that the fact that you went to the University of Guelph comes up?
I maybe, hmm, I feel like on like LinkedIn or like in like job interviews or things like that, if someone mentions like Guelph, I'm like, I went to Guelph and like kind of use that as kind of a baseline. Um, but I feel like that's the main scenario where I've kind of come across other Guelph grads so far. Or in my neighborhood, I'll see sometimes people with like their Guelph merch on. And like if I'm not wearing my Guelph merch, I'm like, in my head like, woohoo, go Griffins. So I feel like those are the scenarios where I might see some Guelph grads.
Amazing. Well, I know you're a busy person, so I don't want to keep you too much longer, but is there anything that we didn't talk about that you would like to touch on, or maybe a piece of advice you'd want to share with the audience or potential prospective students that want to take the program you took?
Yeah, I think kind of a few things maybe I would want to leave people with is like if you're thinking about applying to Guelph, do it. If you're thinking about going to Guelph, do it. I had the best time there. And kind of coming back to that piece around balance is like if you are there or you're planning on going, really try to find that balance between your studies and also enjoying your time, enjoying your campus, enjoying the food, enjoying friends, because it goes by so fast. And so really taking the time to enjoy all the different kind of opportunities, both educationally and socially while you're there.
Of course. And like I said, you are a bit of an influencer. If people want to learn more about you or find out more about your kind of info, nutritional tips and all that, where can they find you?
Yeah, they can find me on Instagram and TikTok at Bite and Bloom. So just no periods, no nothing, just at Bite and Bloom.
Amazing. Well, thank you, Lauren. I really appreciate you taking the time to chat with us today. If you like what you heard, please do like and subscribe wherever you get your podcast. Drop us a review. And for the latest updates, you can always follow us on all our socials. And for more info, please visit uofguelph.ca. I'll put all the links in the show notes, including all the information for Lauren. Our show's theme music is actually by Paige Rutledge, who is also a Guelph grad. And we'll be back next time with another interview with another amazing Guelph grad. Till next time, thank you so much for listening. And thank you again, Lauren.
Thanks for having me.